We're in chapter 3 of the Jungle Book, in the last part of the chapter. And remember, Mowgli has been taken during the night by the monkey people. And, well, the monkey folk. They're not people, but the monkeys. And now Bagheera and Baloo are trying to get him back. And they are talking to Kaa, the snake. They fear me alone. They have good reason, said Kaa. Chattering, foolish, vain, foolish and chattering are the monkeys, but a man-thing in their hands is no good luck. They grow tired of the nuts they pick and throw them down. They carry a branch half a day, meaning to do great things with it, and then they snap it in two. That man-thing is not to be envied. They call me also Yellowfish, was it? Worm, earthworm, said Bagheera, as well as other shameful things, which I will not repeat. We must remind them to speak well of their master, Asp. We must help their wandering memories. Now, which way did they go with the cub? The jungle alone knows. Toward the sunset, I believe, said Baloo. We had thought that you would know, Kaa. I? How? I take them when they come in my way, but I do not hunt the Benderlog, or frogs, or green scum on a waterhole, for that matter. Up! Hello! Look up, Baloo of the Seoni Wolfpack. Baloo looked up to see where the voice came from, and there was Ron the kite, sweeping down with the sun shining on the upturned flanges of his wings. It was near Ron's bedtime, but he had ranged all over the jungle looking for the bear, and had missed him in the thick foliage. What is it? Said Baloo. I have seen Mowgli among the Benderlog. He asked me to tell you. I watched. The Benderlog have taken him beyond the river, to the monkey city, to the cold lairs. They may stay there for a night, or 10 nights, or an hour. I have told the bats to watch through the dark time. That is my message. Good hunting, all you below. Full gorge and a deep sleep to you, Ron, cried Bagheera. I will remember you in my next kill, and put aside the head for you alone, O best of kites. It is nothing. The boy held the master word. I could have done no less. And Ron circled up again to his roost. He has not forgotten to use his tongue, said Baloo with a chuckle of pride. To think of one so young, remembering the master word for the birds too, while he was being pulled across the trees. It was most firmly driven into him, said Bagheera, but I am proud of him. And now we must go to the cold lairs. They all knew where that place was, but few of the jungle people ever went there, because what they called the cold lairs was an old deserted city, lost and buried in the jungle, and beasts seldom used a place that men have once used. The wild boar will, but the hunting tribes do not. Besides, the monkeys lived there as much as they could be said to live anywhere, and no self-respecting animal would come within eyeshot of it, except in times of drought, when the half-ruined tanks and reservoirs held a little water. It is half a night's journey, at full speed, said Bagheera, and Baloo looked very serious. I will go as fast as I can, he said anxiously. We dare not wait for you. Follow, Baloo. We must go on quick foot, Kaa and I. Feet or no feet, I can keep abreast of all your four, said Kaa shortly. Baloo made one effort to hurry, but had to sit down panting, and so they left him to come on later, while Bagheera hurried forward at full speed. Kaa said nothing, but, strive as Bagheera might, the huge rock python held level with him. When they came to a hill stream, Bagheera gained, because he bounded across, while Kaa swam, his head and 2 feet of his neck clearing the water. But on level ground, Kaa made up the distance. By the broken lock that freed me, said Bagheera when twilight had fallen, you are no slow goer. I am hungry, said Kaa. Besides, they called me Speckled Frog. worm, earthworm, and cowardly as well. All the same, let us go on, said Ka. Ka seemed to pour himself along the ground, finding the shortest road with his steady eyes and keeping to it. In the cold lairs, the monkey people were not thinking of Mowgli's friends at all. They had brought the boy to the lost city and were very much pleased with themselves for the time. Mowgli had never seen an Indian city before, and though this was almost a heap of ruins, it seemed very wonderful and splendid. Some king had built it long ago on a little hill. You could still trace the stone causeways that led up to the ruined gates, where the last splinters of wood hung to the worn, rusted hinges. Trees had grown into and out of the walls. The battlements were tumbled down and decayed, and wild creepers hung out of the windows of the towers on the walls in bushy, hanging clumps. A great roofless palace crowned the hill, and the marble of the courtyards and the fountains was split and stained with red and green, and the very cobblestones in the courtyard where the king's elephants used to live had been thrust up and apart by grasses and young trees. From the palace, you could see the rows and rows of roofless houses that made up the city, looking like empty honeycombs filled with blackness. The shapeless block of stone that had been an idol in the square where four roads met. The pits and dimples at street corners where the public wells once stood, and the shattered domes of temples with wild figs sprouting on their sides. The monkeys called the place their city. And pretended to despise the jungle people because they lived in the forest. And yet they never knew what the buildings were made for, nor how to use them. They would sit in circles in the hall of the king's council chamber and scratch for fleas and pretend to be men. Or they would run in and out of the roofless houses and collect pieces of plaster and old bricks in a corner and forget where they had hidden them, and fight and cry in scuffling crowds, and then break off to play up and down the terraces of the king's garden, where they would shake the rose trees and the oranges for fun to see the fruit and flowers fall. They explored all the passages and dark tunnels in the palace and the hundreds of little dark rooms, but they never remembered what they had seen and what they had not, and so they drifted about in ones and twos or crowds, telling each other that they were doing as men did. They drank at the tanks and made the water all muddy, and then they fought over it. And then they would all rush together in mobs and shout, "There is no one in the jungle so wise and good and clever and strong and gentle as the Banderlog." Then all would begin again till they grew tired of the city and went back to the treetops, hoping the jungle people would notice them. Mowgli, who had been trained under the law of the jungle, did not like or understand this kind of life. The monkeys dragged him into the cold lairs late in the afternoon, and instead of going to sleep, as Mowgli would have done after a long journey, they joined hands and danced about and sang their foolish songs. One of the monkeys made a speech and told his companions that Mowgli's capture marked a new thing in the history of the Banderlog, for Mowgli was going to show them how to weave sticks and canes together as a protection against the rain and cold. Mowgli picked up some creepers and began to work them in and out, and the monkeys tried to imitate. But in a few minutes they lost interest and began to pull their friends' tails or jump up and down on all fours, coughing. "I wish to eat," said Mowgli. "I am a stranger in this part of the jungle. Bring me food or give me permission to hunt here." 20 or 30 monkeys bounded away to bring him nuts and wild papayas. But they started fighting on the road, and it was too much trouble to go back with what was left of the fruit. Mowgli was sore and angry as well as hungry, and he roamed through the empty city, giving the strangers' hunting call from time to time, but no one answered. And Mowgli felt that he had reached a very bad place indeed. "All that Baloo has said about the Banderlog is true," he thought to himself. "They have no law, no hunting call, and no leaders. Nothing but foolish words and little picking thievish hands. So if I am starved or killed here, it will be all my own fault. But I must try to return to my own jungle. Baloo will surely beat me, but that is better than chasing silly rose leaves with the Banderlog." No sooner had he walked to the city wall than the monkeys pulled him back, telling him that he did not know how happy he was, and pinching him to make him grateful. He set his teeth and said nothing. but went with the shouting monkeys to a terrace above the red sandstone reservoirs that were half full of rainwater. There was a ruined summer house of white marble in the center of the terrace, built for queens dead 100 years ago. The domed roof had half fallen in and blocked up the underground passage from the palace by which the queens used to enter. But the walls were made of screens of marble tracery, beautiful milk-white fretwork set with agates and cornelians and jasper and lapis lazuli. And as the moon came up behind the hill, it shone through the open work, casting shadows on the ground like black velvet embroidery. Sore, sleepy, and hungry as he was, Mowgli could not help laughing when the Bandarlog began, 20 at a time, to tell him how great and wise and strong and gentle they were, and how foolish he was to wish to leave them. "We are great! We are free! We are wonderful! We are the most wonderful people in all the jungle! We all say so, and so it must be true!" they shouted. Now, as you are a new listener and can carry our words back to the jungle people so that they will notice us in the future, we will tell you all about our most excellent selves. Mowgli made no objection, and the monkeys gathered by hundreds and hundreds on the terrace to listen to their own speakers singing the praises of the Bandarlog. And whenever a speaker stopped for lack of breath, they would all shout together, "This is true! We all say so!" Mowgli nodded and blinked and said, "Oh, yes," when they asked him a question, and his head spun with the noise. "Tabaqui the jackal must have bitten all these people," he said to himself, "and now they have madness. Certainly this is Dewani the madness. Do they never go to sleep? Now there is a cloud coming to cover that moon. If it were only a big enough cloud, I could try to run away in the darkness. But I am tired." That same cloud was being watched by two good friends in the ruined ditch below the city wall, for Bagheera and Kaa, knowing well how dangerous the monkey people were in large numbers, did not wish to run any risks. The monkeys never fight unless they are 100 to 1, and few in the jungle like those odds. All right, we'll stop there and we'll pick up at the end of this chapter 3 next time. I'll see you then.